Hello friends, welcome to Awdhesh Academy. Friends, we are going to now start a new chapter, the thoughts of Western thinkers. Under this chapter, we will be learning about the thoughts of different philosophers of the West like Socrates, Aristotle, Plato and so many others. And we will see how they have arrived at the conclusions as to what actions are ethical and what actions are not ethical. But before we proceed for that, let us first understand the importance of philosophy. Why should we study philosophy? Why not learn only science, art? What is the need of philosophy? This is very important. And so today we are going to learn about the importance of philosophy. First of all, the word philosophy has come from the Greek word philosophia, which means the love of wisdom. So, philosopher is a person who is a wise person, who loves the wisdom. But what is wisdom? Wisdom is the ability to use the knowledge in the right way, in the right situation. We all have different type of knowledge. You will find there will be a policy, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, that is there in the Bible. And there is a policy that if somebody slaps you on one cheek, you offer other cheek. The question is, which philosophy, which method we should follow and which method we should reject in a given situation. Because sometimes it may be necessary to punish the person who is doing harm to you, but sometimes a compassion may be more useful. Now, how to use this principle? Because in life you will find that for every principle there is an opposite principle, and therefore if you are wise, you will be able to use the right principle at the right time on the right people. And that is the job of philosopher. He gives you the options and train you as to how to use the right principle at the right time. Now, the wise people are those people who not only have the knowledge, but they know how to use that knowledge to achieve the right goal. Electricity, for example, you can use it to any purpose, for air conditioner, for watching the TV, for cooking the food. But if you don't know how to use it, it can even kill a person. So the importance of using anything is very, very important. And the same thing is valid with any principle of life. So philosophy is thus the study of the general and fundamental problems concerning matters such as existence, knowledge, values, reason, mind, and language. These are the scope of philosophy. How we learn in philosophy? Philosophy is about questioning. In science, for example, if there is a principle, you don't question. In religion, if there is a principle, you don't question. But in philosophy, you have the right to question everything. First thing is that a philosopher does not accept anything as it is. He questions. Once you start questioning, then there will be discussion. Because people will have different point of view for every issue. And once you discuss, then you understand the merit and demerit of each argument. So there has to be a rational argument. You cannot say that this is what I believe, so I am not going to argue. A philosopher can question everything, and you have to prove as to why you believe or why you do what you do. And then after, once the discussion has taken place, the pluses and minuses has been studied, then there should be a systematic presentation of the whole philosophy or thought so that people can take advantage of that. That is what is philosophy. What philosophy try to find out? It try to find out the meaning of life. Why we are living? What is the purpose? Why we are born? See, these questions are very, very important. Because just earning money is not the goal. Just getting power is not the goal. Just procreation is not the goal. Just pleasure is not the goal. Why for we are here? We are here to spend 60, 70, 80 years of our life here. We should know what is the meaning of life. We should also know the nature of reality. Because the reality, what it looks, is actually not like that. In our philosophy, we have called it Maya, appearance. But the truth is different. You have to go deeper into what is appearance. That is the job of philosophy. Then we should know why people do what they do. You will find that in the same family, in the same organization, in the same country, there are good people, there are bad people. There are people who are breaking the law, the people who are complying the law, the people who are speaking truth, the people who are speaking lie. Why people are behaving in a different manner, that is also a job of the philosopher. Philosopher also try to find out as to why something happens, why somebody feel pain, why somebody feel happiness, why somebody feels satisfaction, why somebody feels frustration. And thereafter they try to find out what is the best way to live your life. Because ultimately we want to live our life in the best way. We want to be happy, satisfied, we want to achieve things in life. And we ultimately want what is the best way of life. After all this, the philosopher tells you what is the best way to live. So don't get swayed by the media reports, by the advice of the other people. The philosophers have spent their life finding out what is the ideal way of living. If you know those thoughts, then you will know what is right and what is wrong. And then once you have this knowledge, you will certainly be doing the right thing and avoiding the wrong thing. It's very important for us to know what is just and what is unjust. Because ultimately we all want that people should be just to us. In the same way, the world wants that we should be just to them. Only when you are just to other people, you can expect justice from other people. So what is justice? What is equality? How can we become just? So all these questions are the goal of the philosophy. Now the philosophers are not the people who are actually after money, after power. These are for the people who are having no knowledge of philosophy, who are just chasing a target, running the rat race. They are trying to win the rat race. They forget that even if they win the rat race, they will still be rat only. Philosophers tell you how to grow, how to live life, not what other people think that this is the way of life. What you think is the right way of life, because we are all different. We can derive satisfaction in different things. Somebody can enjoy teaching, somebody can enjoy singing, somebody can enjoy writing, somebody can enjoy social service, somebody can enjoy politics. So each person's satisfaction is different. And so the key challenge is to find out what makes us happy. Robert Browning, one of the philosophers, said, life has a meaning, and to find the meaning is my meat and drink. Just like an ordinary person derives satisfaction in eating, drinking, a philosopher spends his life in finding out what is the meaning of life, so that he can live a meaningful life. Philosophers are not very successful people in the worldly standard, not because they cannot become successful, but because they don't value these things. Let's take a case of Albert Einstein. He is one of the greatest philosophers of all time. He could have made any amount of money, but he lived a simple life because his thoughts were like a philosopher. He saw the futility of living in big bungalows, in a big house. He just lived in one-bedroom apartment because he knew that more than that is not necessary. Brother Karamazov, they are the great philosophers, and they once said, philosophers are one of those who don't want millions, but an answer to their questions. So if you want the answer for the fundamental questions, then you are toward learning the philosophy of life. But what is the benefit of the knowledge of philosophy? Why should we waste our time learning philosophy? It is so because we should each have a philosophy. Unless you have a philosophy of life, you will be confused. You will be moving in one direction, you will be moving in other direction, then something else will come, then you will start moving in other direction. At the end of the life, you will feel that you have not lived your life well because you never had any philosophy. Philosophy is about searching the ultimate truth of life, the truth of your life, and the knowledge of this truth makes you free because you don't waste your time in pursuit of the things which are unnecessary. You only go for the things which matters. Francis Bacon, one of the famous English philosophers, once said, "Seek you the first the good things of the mind, and the rest will either be supplied or its loss will not be felt." If you have got the great things of your mind, what gives satisfaction to your mind, then other things will not become material to you, and you will be happy in whatever you have. But in the modern day of science, it's very difficult for us to understand the value of philosophy. We believe that the scientific knowledge is the best knowledge. We should study everything scientifically, but everything cannot be studied scientifically. Let us now understand the difference between the science and the philosophy. Science deals with the inert matter, while philosophy deals with the human being. Therefore, the scientific laws are same all over the world. The water is going to behave in the same manner in India as well as in USA or Russia. But human beings within the same family behave differently. And there is a wide difference of the philosophy of the people in different countries. The scientific knowledge is universal, eternal, and absolute. The gravity has existed since time immemorial. The law of Newton, much before it was discovered, was there because it is eternal, universal. Philosophy is contextual. It is alive. It is relative. Your philosophy has to be depending upon the context. Like a human being changes from childhood to adulthood to his maturity, the same way the philosophy also keeps changing because it's a live thing, because it deals with the living being. And it is relative. The philosophy which you can follow in India cannot follow in USA. It's relative. Science is the analytical description. Philosophy is a synthetic interpretation. Science will break the things into parts. Like a medicine, there will be separate doctors who are specializing in eyes, ears, heart, liver. But philosophy tries to synthesize all that. So philosophy will try to find a common ground for everything, while science will break the things into parts and then they will analyze. The science wishes to resolve the whole into parts, organism into organs, and obscure into known. But philosophy does just the reverse. From the known, it tries to find out what is obscure, what is hidden behind that. From the different organs of knowledge, they try to find out what is the organism from which all this knowledge is coming. In the same way, from the part, it tries to create the whole. That is what is philosophy. The science tells us how to heal and how to kill. It has medicine using which we can heal so many people. But then it has also created nuclear bomb or the arms which can be used for killing the people. But only philosophy can tell us when to heal and when to kill. It does not say don't kill. It does not say don't heal. But when to heal and when to kill is the job of the philosophy. Science gives us knowledge, but philosophy gives us wisdom, because only a wise person knows how to use the right knowledge at the right time on the right people. This is what is the job of the philosophy. So I hope that today you have been able to understand the importance of philosophy in leading a good life, and leading a life of purpose, leading a life of meaning. And that is not valid only in respect of civil services, in the case of private sector organization, but valid in all aspects of life. Thank you very much for watching the video. Keep watching the video, and we are going to start the different philosophers' thought in the subsequent lessons. Thank you. Friends, we are going to start the lessons on the thoughts of Western philosophers about ethics. And today we are going to learn about Socrates. Socrates is said to be the father of Western philosophy because practically the Western philosophy started with his time. Before Socrates, there was an era of sophists. Who are the sophists? The sophists believe that all the truths are relative in nature. That means depends on the person, depends on the situation, and depends on the circumstances of each case, the truth has to be decided. These sophists travel from one place to another place. They used to teach grammar, interpretation of poetries, and the philosophy of mythology and religion. Their emphasis was mainly on the rhetoric because they used to tell you how to strongly advocate your case. It's just like an advocate who stands in the court and try to prove that his client is innocent. So, sophists used to use their logics to prove anything right. And they developed this art by rhetorics and by different type of logics. They believe that man is the center of the universe and he can basically decide what is good for him and what is bad for him. In order to explain how the sophists used to work, let me tell you a story. A teacher who was a sophist opened a school and he said, "Here we teach you how to win impossible cases by sheer bad logic." And many people are interested in proving the cases by using all sort of logic. So many students registered. Now one student kept on postponing the payment of fee till the course is over. After the course was over, he refused to pay. He said, "You have not been able to teach me how to win impossible cases by sheer bad logic." The matter was taken to the court and the arguments of both the teacher and the students were to be put forth. First, it was the turn of the student. He told the judge, "My lord, before you pronounce any judgment, let me tell you that I don't have to pay any money." The judge was surprised. He said, "How can you say that?" He said, "Look, if I am able to win the case, I naturally don't have to pay any money. But if I lose the case and my teacher wins the case, that means my teacher has not been able to teach me how to win impossible cases by sheer bad logic. And again, I don't have to pay." The judge was totally convinced. He was about to pronounce the judgment in favor of the student. But the teacher said, "My lord, I get my money either way you decide the case." Now the judge was totally surprised. How it is possible? He said, "Can you explain it?" Then the teacher said, "If you decide the case in my favor, I naturally get my money. But if you decide the case in favor of the student, that means I have been able to teach the student how to win impossible cases by sheer bad logic. And then again, I get my money. So either way, I get my money." So you can understand that the judge was totally confused. He did not know how to pronounce the judgment. So you can understand that arguments are so much delusionary that it confuses even the brightest of the bright people. How do you expect an ordinary person, a common citizen, to actually guide his life based on the arguments? People want clarity. They want certainty. They want to know what should be done and what is not to be done. They don't want to get into different type of arguments. And if everybody start deciding what is right and what is wrong, then there will be total chaos in the society. Because everybody, even within the family, will decide what is right and wrong, and such type of society, such type of nation can never succeed in achieving any objective for the nation. In this background, Socrates started his teaching. He brought clarity to the people, but without actually being dogmatic or trying to create a belief. So let us first understand about the life of the Socrates. let us try to know who Socrates was. He is considered to be one of the greatest philosophers of the world of all times. We can call him the father of Western philosophy. And he made the first systematic attempt to define morality and ethics, what is right and what is wrong. He was born around 469 BC and he served in army and is known for his courage. He practiced what he preached, and that is the greatness of Socrates. Because most of the philosophers actually don't practice in the real world. They give theories, but Socrates taught you principles which can be used in the day-to-day life. He learned from life. He never wrote a book. He used to preach, and his student Plato used to record what he used to preach, and then it was compiled in the form of the books, and that is how we know about Socrates. How did Socrates teach to the people? He first told the people that you should learn to doubt. Because what happens that when we believe something to be true and we don't doubt about the authenticity of that, then we cannot become a learned person or a wise person. People are blindly following some beliefs. They don't question the dogmas. They don't question the axioms. We know about the belief in God, believe in so many things. What is dogma? Dogma is basically a principle or rules which cannot be questioned, or they are the article of faith for different religions. For example, the dogma of the 10 commandments of the Christianity. Now that cannot be questioned because that is said to be said by the God. Axioms are basically those statements or principles which are generally accepted to be true, but they need not to be true in all the conditions. For example, the government should not negotiate with the terrorist. This is an axiom which may be broadly true in most of the situation, but it is not always true. Sometimes it may be better to negotiate with the terrorist. So, Socrates said, don't accept anything, doubt everything. That is the first thing which you should do as a philosopher or as a thinker. Unless you doubt the things, unless your mind turn around and examine itself, try to generate the knowledge from inside, from your own experience, you cannot learn the wisdom of life. He maintained that he knows nothing, but he is wise because he knows that he knows nothing. Unlike that, many people believe that they know everything, and therefore they are not willing to accept anything. And that is the reason that they become dogmatic or they become blind, faithful people. So his method of finding out the truth is to put a lot of questions to somebody who believes that something he knows, and thereafter he will demolish that what he knows is not a correct thing, but it is only a pretension of knowledge or the superficiality aspect of the knowledge. Let us now understand the key teachings of Socrates. The first and the foremost thing what he taught the people is the importance of knowledge. Most of the people think knowledge is external. You can acquire from the books. He said no. Knowledge actualizes action. That means if you have the right knowledge, you will do the right action. If you have the wrong knowledge, you will do the wrong action. It is impossible for us to have the right knowledge and do the wrong action. And therefore, what is most important is that we should acquire the right knowledge. And the most important knowledge in this world is the knowledge of good and evil. What is right for us, what is wrong for us, we should know. Because once we have a clear-cut concept of good and evil, we will not be doing any evil act in future. And that is why this is the most important thing to know. Nobody knowingly do something which is bad. People do wrong thing because they are ignorant about the right knowledge. And therefore he thought that if we can impart the right knowledge to the people,
we can make them virtuous and we can make the people do good things in life. The second important thing is pursuit of virtue. He said that the most worthwhile pursuit of any human being is to follow the life of virtue. What is virtue? Speaking truth, doing good to others, love other people. So whatever we call virtue, the best thing is we should follow that in our life. He preferred the life of self-improvement and duty rather than the life of indulgence, honor, or worldly pursuit. Because there is absolutely no end of the physical pleasure, of indulgence. Honor is also very temporary. Today you may have honor, tomorrow it may go because of one action or because the society has changed its views. In the same way, there is no end of the worldly pursuit. Whatever money you have, whatever power you have, you will still not be on the top, and even if you reach on the top, you cannot remain there for all the time. Therefore, he said, let us improve ourselves, become better than what we were yesterday, and that is the best thing to live the life. He said that one must pursue wisdom and virtue rather than wealth or glory, because wisdom and virtue comes from within. It is within our hands and means, but wealth and glory come from outside, and we are always dependent upon other people. And he says that virtue is sufficient for happiness. If you are doing all the right things in your life, you will naturally be happy. And true happiness can be attained only by living a moral life. Because if you are living a virtuous life, then you will be truly happy. When you are living a sinful life, doing wrong thing, then even if you are not caught, you are always afraid that you may be caught, and therefore you will not be able to live a good life. The third important thing what Socrates taught us, to live a moderate life. He said, as a philosopher, you should not give up all the ordinary pleasures of life. You should have good life, but at the same time, that should not become the purpose of your life, and you should not become slave of your pleasure. You should not become slave of the glories and the worldly pursuits. In his opinion, the physical pleasure is the greatest hindrance in the spiritual growth. Because when we go for physical pleasures, we cannot go for spiritual growth simultaneously. So the more you are able to suppress or control or discipline your physical activities, the higher you can rise in the spiritual domain. And therefore he advocated a mild level of asceticism, a simplicity, a life of simplicity. As it is said, simple living, high thinking. So unless you simplify your life, you cannot think highly. The fourth lesson which he has given is that we should go for a spiritual development. He believed that human soul is spiritual, while the body is physical. So just like in Hindu or the Indian tradition, it is believed that the soul or Atma is immortal and the body is something which is mortal, and both work together for a living being. So he believed in the similar way. He said that the soul is basically divine, it is part of the divine, and the body is mortal, coming from the physical matter of this body. It is the soul which makes the body alive. And when the soul departs, a person dies. And therefore one must work for strengthening the soul. Now how do you strengthen the soul? By doing the virtuous deeds. The more good things you do in your life, the more your soul grows. And therefore you should try to be spiritual by doing good things in your life. However, what he taught actually energized the youth. They challenged the existing dogmas and beliefs, and the government of that time did not like it. They executed Socrates because they thought that he is creating chaos, he is confusing the people, and therefore he was executed and he was given a death sentence by drinking of poison. However, Socrates accepted that punishment but refused to budge from what he used to teach. And one of the very beautiful thing what he said is, an unexamined life is not worth living. That means you should examine your life. You should understand why you are living. What is the goal of your life? You should examine yourself, because that is the only thing about the goodness of life. He advocated liberty and freedom of speech, because everybody has to apply his mind, think freely, and then only he can become wise. So I hope, my friend, that you've been able to understand the basic principles of Socrates. And Socrates has given the thoughts which are relevant even today. Even today, we are teaching the people that they should be liberal, they should be free thinker, they should follow the virtues, and all that is started with Socrates. Thank you very much for watching the video. Keep watching the video and take the test after the video. Thank you very much.
We are learning about the thoughts of the Western philosophers. Today we are going to learn about Plato, one of the greatest Greek philosophers and the disciple of Socrates. So he has also given some revolutionary thought which has been found relevant in this world time to time, and his ideas has been experimented in different part of the world even in the modern times. He was a disciple of Socrates. Let us learn more about Plato today. First, a little introduction about Plato. He was born in 427 BC, and he was the son of a wealthy and influential Athenian. It is very important to know that what we are makes us what we think. If you are born in a rich family, aristocratic family, our thoughts are likely to be affected by that. So he was born in a wealthy and influential parents, and he was the student of Socrates. So you can see there was a mixture of the two. Socrates was a simple man, while he came from a very wealthy family. In fact, we know about Socrates through his writings, because Socrates never wrote anything. We know Socrates through the writings of Plato in the book called Dialogues, where he has shown Socrates as the main protagonist. So whatever Socrates said, he recorded that, and today we know Socrates because of Plato. When Socrates died, because he was forced to consume poison, then Plato traveled to Egypt and Italy. He studied in the students of Pythagoras and spent several years advising the ruling family of the Syracuse. In 386 BC, he returned to Athens and founded his own school of philosophy and called that Academy. Aristotle was his most famous disciple, and he died 347 BC at the age of 81. So he lived till his old age, and he has preached over a long period of time, so we can find a lot of variation of his thoughts. Now, what are the fundamental thoughts of Plato? He has said that the moral values of citizens are governed by the moral values of the society. Most of the time you will find people complaining that people in our country like India are not honest. They are corrupt, they break the law, they don't keep their houses clean, they don't keep the surrounding clean, they don't behave properly. So many complaints may be there. Now what Plato said is that you can have the ideal citizens only when there is an ideal state. If the country itself is corrupt, the politicians themselves are corrupt, the rulers themselves are bad, then how can we expect the citizens to be honest, obedient, and disciplined? So he says that if we want the citizen to be ideal, then we must create an ideal state or an ideal nation. How to create that ideal state is the real challenge. He said that the world in which we are living is actually a transient, because it's constantly changing, and it tries to achieve the perfection which is there in heaven or in the ideal world. which he called word of forms or word of ideas. So he says that there is an ideal word, there is a word of forms where everything is perfect. And we should try to achieve that word so that we can replicate that perfection of that word into our own world. But how do we understand what is the perfect word? Then he said that only a philosopher who is a very wise person is capable of knowing what is the ideal word. And therefore he gave the concept of philosopher king. He said that a philosopher is the best person to become king because he knows what is the ideal word, plus he has no interest in the material gains, he has no interest in the power, and therefore he is the ideal person to rule any country. He has written a very famous book. The name of the book is The Republic. In The Republic, he tried to explain this concept of an ideal word and our inability to understand the perfection of an ideal word. So in The Republic, he explains the route to knowledge and responsibility of the philosopher through an allegory about the prisoners in a cave. Please look at this picture. In this picture, you find that there is a cave, and inside the cave, there are certain prisoners who are sitting and their eyes are toward a wall. On the back side, you can see a fire, and this fire is illuminating, and therefore these people who are having their eyes on the wall are able to see the shadow of what is going on behind their back. So some people are traveling on the roadways, as you can see here, and when they are traveling on the roadways, these people can see only the image of that. They cannot see the reality, and therefore they don't know the truth. That is the limitation of the common man, because he can see only the perception, but he cannot see only the reality. And in order to know the reality, you must be a philosopher. Plato has given some idea about virtues. He says that virtue and knowledge are connected with each other. Virtue can be taught because most of the people are not virtuous because they don't have the right knowledge. And therefore he says that it is possible to teach morality to the people just like we can teach any other subject in the schools and colleges. He divided the moral into 4 different parts representing basically 4 different aspects of the soul. First is called wisdom. Now wisdom is basically a virtue of reason. When you are able to see all the pros and cons, analyze the effect, if we do this, what is going to happen, why something is happening, why something is not happening. If you have the power of reason, then you will gain wisdom. In the same way, the virtue of spirit is called valor. Valor means courage, that you will do something, and that can come only when you are convinced about the thing. Only when you have a courage of conviction, only when you have an high ideals, then only you can have valor. The third is a temperance. A temperance is the virtue of the discipline of biological appetite. We all have physical desires. We all have biological appetite, sex and all that. And if you can control that, control your desire, physical desires, eating habits, necessity of having a lot of comfort, sensual pleasure, then you get virtuous, and that virtue is called temperance. And finally he said the 4th virtue is justice. Justice, which is the harmonious functioning of all the 3 virtues which are mentioned here. But you can see that justice is also something spiritual in nature, because in the sense of justice, we consider the whole world as one family. Injustice means that you favor somebody, disfavor somebody. And justice means that when you see everybody belonging to the same family, having the same right, then you become just. So justice can also be said to be an spiritual dimension of the soul. Plato was not in favor of democracy. He did not like democracy because, as we know, even now, what type of leaders the democracy projects? Democracy hardly projects the best of the best leaders. In fact, you will find that most of the leaders who are elected in any election, whether in India or in other part of the world, are generally not the best people, but the people who are actually sometimes the worst. He says that the crowd loves flattery. It is so hungry for honey that at last the wiliest and the most unscrupulous flatterer, calling himself the protector of the people, rises to the supreme power. That means the person who will flatter the crowd, who will say you are the best, that person is generally going to be elected by the people, not the person who is honest and tell the truth. He says, wherein the simpler matters like shoemaking, we think only a specially trained person will serve the purpose. Everybody doesn't start making shoes. But why in politics we presume that everyone who knows how to get votes knows how to administer a city or a state? This is a very, very valid question. If you want a doctor or to take care of your health, you want a qualified doctor, a person who has spent years in learning medicine. But what about the politicians? Politicians have the ultimate power. They run your country. Should there not be a minimum qualification for that? Should we not test their administrative skill? But the way the democracy functions, we don't test anything. Just somebody who gets the vote become the ruler. So he says that in the democracy, the people who are elected are unfit normally to administer, because this is not tested, and what is tested is their capacity to take vote, and often the flattery is more effective for getting the votes rather than doing the real work. So he says that the government varies according to the character of the people. If the people are bad, they will elect the wrong government, and therefore this vicious cycle will continue. So a state is that what is the citizen, and the citizen will be what the state is. And therefore, unless the state is made virtuous, good, you cannot have good citizens, and the democracy is likely to complicate the matter. It is not going to solve the problem because it will continue to elect bad people in the government. He says that the democracy, people elect the people who are like them and not the best ones. You must have seen that the people elect those people who are like them. People often vote on the basis of caste, religion, gender, economic background, and all those factors. They don't elect the best person, they elect the people who are like them. And therefore, if the people themselves are bad, they are likely to elect only the bad people. Because most people are governed by the emotions and prejudices rather than by reason and fair play. So they will elect somebody whom they like, not who is the best. Now you have to understand that Plato came from aristocratic family, and therefore he has a natural antipathy for democracy. He did not like democracy. And moreover, his teacher Socrates was punished to death by a democratic state. And therefore his hatred for democracy is visible all the time. On the other hand, Plato was very much impressed by Sparta, which was basically a military autocracy. So he has more support for the autocracy rather than the democracy. Plato has given a concept of republic, how a good country can be created. He said that the people should be divided into three classes: common people, which will include farmers, merchants, soldiers, and the guardians. First, the legislature will select the first set of guardians, and later they shall succeed by hierarchy. Now, how they are going to select the guardian, we are going to discuss. He said that republic should have no property or family system. There will be a community living and common eating. That means nobody will have any property. Nobody will even have women and children. The women and children will also be commonly shared. The children shall be taken away at the certain age and they will be taken care of by the state. Weak and infirm children will be exposed to death at the birth itself because they can't contribute much to the society. There is a reason for it. You must have seen that many children who may be very much talented cannot get good education, cannot excel because their parents don't take care of them. On the other side, even an average children can excel in life because their parents take care of them. So Plato thought that if all the children are taken care of by the state, they can all get good education and they can all excel because of their merit. Now how we are going to select the three categories of people and particularly the guardian, let us understand that. He says that for the first 10 years of life, the education shall be predominantly physical. We'll give physical education to the children. Every school will have a gymnasium and playground. Then they will face the first test. So first they should be made physically stronger. Now after 10 years they will give their first test. Those who will fail will be assigned to the economical work of the nation. They will become businessmen, clerks, factory workers and farmers. But those who will pass this test, they will receive 10 more years of education and training in body and mind and character. So that is important. First level, you will be going for the normal jobs. Thereafter, what will happen? That you will be trained for further 10 years. Then there will be a second test. Those who will fail will become auxiliaries like executive head, military officers of the state. They will be like clerk or the bureaucrats, you can say. Then those who qualify the second level of test, they will go for further training of 15 more years. And they will be given the doctrine of ideas and forms and its application. Then the selection of guardians will take place, which will be based purely on merit. And these guardians will be the ultimate ruler of the republic. He has also set some more features of republic. He said there should be a strict censorship of literature, drama and music. Why? Because he believes that literature, drama and music often corrupt the soul. You must have seen that a lot of myth is being propagated through the literature, through the fiction, through the art. So people lose their rational thinking because of that. And therefore he says there should be strict censorship and people should not be allowed to say what they want to misguide the people. Then he says a royal myth should be created that God has created men in three kinds. So it's something like our caste system. So he says that people should be told that these are created in three categories. God himself has created them into three categories. And therefore, guardian will rule and then there will be soldiers and there will be ordinary people. Then everyone should attend to his business without interfering in the business of others. Then he proposed that the guardians will become hereditary after the first selection. So you can see that its system is something like our caste system. We know that initially the four castes which are created in Hinduism were basically based on profession. One who educates is Brahmin, one who fights is Kshatriya, and one who does the business and other activities of Vaishyas, and then who does the service for Sudras. But later on it became hereditary. The same concept was proposed by Plato. So you cannot say that it is a very progressive stage, particularly in today's context when caste is considered to be one of the great evil of Indian society and the Hindu religion. So it is understandable that Plato's ideas has been heavily criticized also. First of all, he believed on the state totalitarian, state dictatorship. There is no freedom to the people. You can't choose what you want to become. The state will decide. Even they will snatch the children. The mothers has to live in the common society. People cannot have property, people cannot have even women and children. So basically everybody will become a commodity, a resource for the state. So this has been very, very heavily criticized. Then the concept of guardians make heredity is again something which is criticized a lot because other people will never get any opportunity because they were not born in the right parents. So he says that in the present context, this has no relevance. Plato has also shown no interest in justice. So if you are born in the family of guardians, you can become guardian, but otherwise you cannot become a guardian, you cannot become a ruler. So it's like our caste system. This cannot be justified. Then republic is very autocratic and based on aristocratic principle. This is also against the common principles of today, which is more democratic in nature. It subordinates the individual to state because individuals have no freedom. Only state will decide what is your utility. In fact, Bernard Russell, a very famous philosopher, traces the root of fascism to this concept of republic. And it is very, very offensive to the modern democratic values where we believe that everybody is equal. So Plato has been greatly criticized for these reasons. Nevertheless, he has exploded certain myths and he has made us thought that we have to create a good state if we expect the citizens to become a good citizens. He has also given some ideas about it, and these ideas are practiced in different parts of the world from time to time. Thank you very much for watching the video. Keep watching the video. We will be putting up more lessons in the subsequent lessons. Thank you. We are learning about the thoughts of great Western philosophers. We have learned about Socrates, we have learned about Plato, and today we are going to learn about Aristotle. Aristotle was the most famous disciple of Plato. He was born in 384 BC in Greece, and his father was a court physician of Macedonian king. He lost his parents at a very early age, and he studied under Plato for 20 years in the academy which has been set up by Plato. Then he went to Macedonia at the request of King Philip to tutor his son Alexander the Great. And Alexander the Great was 13 years old that time. So he supervised the studies of Alexander and also taught him about different moral values and the art of dealing with people. Later on, he founded his own school of philosophy at a place called Lyceum. Aristotle, even though he was the most famous disciple of Plato, but his thoughts were quite different than Plato. In fact, he has very famously said, "Dear is Plato, but dearer still is truth." So truth is dearer than Plato, his guru. So he followed the truth rather than blindly following his teacher. Plato believed about an ideal world where everything is perfect. He called it world of forms, which is something like heaven, where everything is already perfect. But Aristotle did not believe. He rather believed in the shaping force which is actually trying to reach to more and more perfection. It's something like an evolution whose ultimate goal is to achieve perfection. So he believed that there is a force which is trying to make more and more perfect world. And he asked us to imagine the concept of prime mover unmoved. That means there is an unmoved person, God, who is actually moving the entire creation. And this entity, which is prime mover unmoved, is invisible, which is spaceless, sexless, passionless, changeless, and it is perfect, and we can call it God. So God is basically trying to move the world as somebody trying to move a wheel. So he moves the world just like a beloved moves a lover. So this is what he presumed. He has also given the concept of soul. He said that soul is the essence and the sum of all the powers of the body. But he believed that soul cannot have independent existence of the body. Soul and body are two things connected with each other. They are like form and the wax. They are mirror image of each other. So the body is the mirror image of soul in the material world, and the soul is the mirror image of body in the spiritual world. So he did not believe that the soul is put into the body and body dies and the soul is immortal. He rather believed that they exist together. However, soul is not something which will die. It will continue to exist and it will gather another body, but in all the cases, soul and body will exist together. Soul cannot have its own independent existence. Aristotle believed in the unity of all the forms of knowledge, whether it is science or philosophy or religion. He did not differentiate between the different forms of knowledge. And because of his quest of unity of knowledge, he is often called the philosopher. The philosopher. The meaning is that he is the greatest philosopher because he also has given so many concepts of science. He is also the first scientist. He has invented logic. He has invented many principles of science which were used in the Western world for thousands of years. But his main contribution has been on two important aspects, that is happiness and the virtues or ethics. According to Aristotle, the happiness and virtues goes together. If you are not a virtuous person, if you are not doing the right deeds, you cannot be happy. And if you are happy, then you will be doing the right deeds. So they go together. You don't have to sacrifice the virtues to get the happiness. He has given a concept of what he called summum bonum. He says that all the things are done with an end in mind. For example, a ship building is done to make the ship. In the same way, economy is used for creation of the wealth. Medicine is for giving you health. So he says that all the human activities are directed toward achieving an end. And these ends are ultimately to achieve something, a bigger end, which he called summum bonum. And that summum bonum is not used for achieving any other end. That means it is basically the ultimate goal of life. So he says that our aim of life is not goodness for its own sake, but happiness. Because even if we want something like honor, pleasure, intellect, anything, whatever we want in life, wealth, ultimate goal is that through wealth, through honor, we want to achieve happiness. But happiness is something which is not used to achieve anything else. It is the final goal, and that is why he called happiness as the summum bonum of human being. Now, summum bonum of human being, what is this? He says that every creature has some special faculties, and the satisfaction of that special faculties gives him the highest level of joy and happiness. For example, sensation is the special faculty of animals, and therefore all the animals crave for pleasure of the senses. In the same way, reason is the special faculty of man, and therefore the summum bonum of man is to be found by living a life of reason. So when you are living the life on the basis of your emotions, on the basis of blind faith, it cannot be a happy life. But if you are living a life based on your reason, then it is the happy life. So happiness should be a pleasure of mind and not the pleasure of senses. And it can happen only when you capture the truth. Because what is the ultimate purpose of rationality, thinking mind, is to know the truth. And therefore, when your goals are to ultimately capture the truth, know the truth, why something is happening, then you will get the ultimate happiness. Aristotle explained that we have two types of virtues. The first virtue is intellectual, the second virtue is ethical. Out of the two, the intellectual virtue is superior. Because intellectual virtue is because of your thoughts. And thoughts is the special faculty of man. So if you are living a life which is based on reason and physical contemplation, then you get intellectual virtue. The second is the ethical virtue. The ethical virtue is relating to action. That means doing something which is ethical in nature. And that is possible only when you subordinate your human passion and appetite and keep it under control of reason. That means if you are having desire to eat very good food, but your mind is strong and it tells you don't eat it because it will spoil your health, and thereafter you don't eat more food, then that means your physical self is subordinated by your reason, and that is what is ethical virtues. You want to have sensual gratification but controlled because of the reason, that is what is ethical virtues. So intellectual and ethical virtues together consist of happiness. When your actions are good, when your thoughts are good, when both are together, then only you can be happy. If your thoughts are high but your actions are bad, you cannot be happy. If your actions are good but your thoughts are bad, again you cannot be happy. Both has to be on the right direction. So your reasoning has to be in tune with your ethics of the society, and then only you can get happiness. Aristotle has taught ethics in a very peculiar and a very special way. He says that ethical virtues consist of control of emotions with reason, and knowledge is not enough to make a person virtuous, as his teacher Plato told. He says that people have the right knowledge but still they cannot become a good person because their passion is not controlled, and passion can be controlled only by self-discipline, and self-discipline can come only when you practice. Only when you practice the virtue, then only you can develop self-discipline. So he has very famously said, excellence is an art won by training and habituation. We do not act rightly because we have virtue or excellence, but we rather have these because we have acted rightly. We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act but a habit. That means he says that nobody is born excellent. Nobody does excellent job. But only when you make it a habit of doing the right job again and again, then you will achieve excellence. For virtue, he taught golden mean. He says that extreme of everything is bad. It is a vice. And the virtue is found in the golden mean. What is that? Let us understand. Please see this chart. Here you see, first thing, courage. If courage is very less, then it is a deficiency of courage and you will be called coward, and that is basically a vice and not a virtue. But if courage is excessive, it will lead to rashness. You will be very rash, and that is again not desirable thing. In the same way, generosity, if it is less, it is called miserliness or stinginess, and if it is more, it becomes extravagance. Both are not desired. If your ambition is too low, you will become a lazy guy. Sloth, that is a vice. And if ambition is very high, it will amount to greed. And in the same way, you can find that there are so many virtues he has created that we must have balance of the two. Extreme has to be avoided. Extreme humility is bad, extreme pride is bad. We should have modest. We should follow the middle path. But all the virtues do not fit into the definition of golden mean. For example, wisdom. You cannot say that there should be a middle path in the wisdom. The more is the wisdom, the better it is. Truthfulness. You cannot say that 50% time I will speak truth and 50% time I will not. That's not a virtue. Impartiality is again no middle path, and magnanimity is again no middle path. You must try to have as much as possible. He has given the concept of justice by saying that basically the justice is the virtue of the state. and it is not of the individual. What is the meaning of it? Meaning is, as an individual, we should try to maximize whatever is legally permitted to us. It is the state which will decide what is legally permitted and what is not permitted. But as an individual, it is our right to achieve our best. Justice, he says, is two types: distributive justice and corrective justice. Distributive justice means rewarding the people according to the merit, and corrective justice means inflicting punishment for doing something wrong. That means if somebody does wrong, he should be punished so that the punishment is more than the pleasure which he gets in doing the wrong thing, and thereby he will not be doing the wrong thing again. He has given the concept of free will. He says that knowledge is not enough for virtue because man chooses between good and evil even with knowledge, and right action is the outcome of the choice which is based on reason, and we can choose the right thing only when you develop a habit of choosing the right thing again and again. Aristotle has also given his own thoughts about politics and the state. He says that the politics is the ethics of a state. That means whatever is the ethical value of the state, the politics will be like that only. And therefore, state must educate people in virtues and provide opportunities for exercising the virtues. It is the responsibility of the state that they train the people for virtues. He believed that a state is like an organism which is having a life and reality of his own, just like an individual. So we cannot have a rigid framework for a state. It's like a living thing which will keep on changing with time. He rejected the individualistic view that we should have all the freedom, we will do whatever we want, and he also rejected the Plato's path where the state is made subordinate to the state and an individual will have no freedom at all. He says that theoretically the ideal form of government will be one where there is a centralization of power, dictatorship, because for a dictator the law will become a tool to govern rather than limiting his powers. But in practice, he says that the monarchy or dictatorship is the worst form of government, because when you have more strength and more power, then what happens that you lose your virtues. When you give too much power to one person, then that person gets corrupt and ultimately you get the worst form of government. Therefore, he says that the best is aristocracy. That is the rule of the informed and capable few. So, not everybody should be elected to become the president or the prime minister, but make it some criteria. But let the people choose among those. Let an illiterate or incapable person should not become the prime minister, president or minister. Give them resources, but you should not make them just purely on the basis of their birth or education. So let there be a choice of the people also, but let there be a qualification also. Both should merge together. Aristotle's thoughts also faced a lot of criticism because basically he gave privilege to the aristocratic people, did not believe on the equality. He accepted inequality of different kinds, including the inequality between man and woman. He has very famously said, woman is to man as the slave is to the master, the manual to the mental worker, and the barbarian to the Greek. Woman is an unfinished man left standing on the lower step in the scale of development. So you can clearly see that he has put women on the lower pedestal. Such type of thoughts is totally unacceptable in the modern world. So his concept of ethics were also quite vague and very middle class or very average, because he did not promote excellence. He rather asked the people to maintain a mediocrity or a middle path. Thus, Aristotle was also criticized for his philosophy of middle path, aristocracy, but nevertheless, Aristotle is believed to be one of the greatest philosophers of all time, and he is respected worldwide for his different type of philosophies, his contribution to science, and in the different spheres of life. Thank you very much for watching the video. Friends, today we are going to discuss about a very important Western philosopher. His name was Epicurus. There are very few philosophers in the world on the name of whom the entire philosophy has been named. Epicurus is one of such great philosophers. The philosophy which has been taught by Epicurus was called Epicureanism. So you can see the greatness of a philosopher who has actually given birth to a new philosophy. So let us first know about the philosopher Epicurus. He was born in 341 BC. He was a Greek philosopher and he was born in the period Hellenistic period. This is a period which is after the death of Alexander the Great and the emergence of Roman Empire. His philosophy later became one of the very important philosophy of the Greeks. There were three basic philosophies. One was called Stoicism, other was called Skepticism. We will be learning in detail about the Stoicism in the next chapter. In the Skepticism, the basic philosophy was that you cannot give any rule for living. For every theory, there is a counter theory. So skeptics are those people, or skeptics are those philosophers who believe that there can be no philosophy which is worth following because no philosophy is perfect. And that is why they are called skeptics. That means doubtful, suspicious, that who are suspicious of everything. His parents were both citizens of Athens. As a boy, he studied philosophy under a Platonist teacher, Pamphilus, for about 4 years. In Athens, Epicurus founded a school which he called the Garden. He never got married and he has no children also. He died in 270 BC at the age of 72 due to kidney stones. So you can see that he is a person who was not into the worldly affairs, but at the same time he was a person who lived for a very long period and died of the old age. That means basically he was not a very revolutionary type of philosopher who were targeted by any section of the society. It is very clear because what he taught is something which we all want to listen and we all find some meaning in what he is teaching. So let's understand what is the meaning of Epicureanism. First of all, he regarded that the happiness and pleasure are the main goal of life rather than virtues. So this point you should understand. You must have learned that Socrates said that virtues are the most important thing and we should live a virtuous life, and only a virtuous life can give you happiness and joy. Epicurus did not agree with that. He said, no, the main goal of life is happiness and pleasure. Our job should be to maximize the happiness and pleasure in our life. But then why we get pain? Because our happiness is taken away when we are suffering from some pain. So he identified that the fear of God, death, and the retribution and the hell are the main reasons why people suffer unhappiness. When you believe in God, then you believe in the scriptures which prohibit so many things. As a result of which, if you violate those principles, you are always afraid that you may go to hell and you may suffer a lot of difficult time thereafter. So even after death, you are not free of pain. So that is the role of God, religion, and he considered that this is one of the main reasons why people are so unhappy. He did not believe that there is any afterbirth. He rather believed the materialistic philosophy which is based on the atomic theory of Democritus. Now let us understand what is the atomic theory of Democritus. Democritus said that everything in the universe, including the soul, consists of atoms. Now these atoms of the body or the atoms of the soul, both are scattered after the death, and therefore there is no possibility of future life. And once there is no possibility of future life, then there is no possibility of any hell or heaven or enjoying any sort of benefit by doing good things in this world, because you will go to heaven or you will go to paradise. So he says that our life finishes when we die. Therefore, he said we should not worry of death. Rather, he said death is a blessing. Why? Because he says that for if death is there, we are not, because once we die we are not, so you don't have to worry about any pain. And as far as we are alive, death is not, and therefore we should enjoy our life to the fullest when we are alive. Epicurus did not believe much on God, but at the same time he did not criticize God because of the fear of prosecution. Because as you know, Socrates was forced to drink poison because he tried to give a liberal values to the people and said that you should decide everything by using your reasons. But if you read his words, if you read his philosophy, you will understand that actually he did not believe on God. He pictured God as immortal beings, means who never dies, who are living in a serene and blessed life somewhere in the outer space, and they are not concerned about what is going on this earth. So it's not that God is concerned about what you are doing. They are enjoying their own life. That's what he believed. He has given a very famous paradox of Epicurus, or the problem of evil, which actually hints that he did not believe in God. Now, what is the paradox of Epicurus? He says, first thing is, if God is willing to prevent evil, but he is not able to do, then he is not omnipotent. Because we see so much of evil in this world, so many wrong things are going on, and so if God is not able to do it, God is not able to prevent, all these evils, then that means he is not omnipotent, or he does not have all the power to protect us from the evil. Now he says, if he is able to prevent the evil, but he is not willing to prevent the evil, then he is not benevolent. Why? Because if somebody is capable of preventing the evil, but if he is not preventing the evil, then his intentions are doubtful. So he is malevolent. Now he says, suppose the God is both able, that means he can prevent the evil, and he is also willing to prevent the evil, and still there is so much evil in the world, then the question is what he is doing. Because he is capable of eliminating evil, and he is also interested in eliminating evil, and still there is so much of evil, that means he is not interested in our affair. And then fourthly he said that if he is neither able nor willing to prevent evil, then why should we call him God at all? Because then we should not respect, we should not worship him. So basically all these four paradoxes which he has given, he has proven that there is no God in this universe. Now we will understand what are the main teachings of Epicurus and how it is different from the philosophers whose philosophy we have learned earlier. First of all, he says that the greatest good for us is to seek modest pleasures in our life in order to attain the state of tranquility, freedom and fear and absence of bodily pain. So he says that we should have the moderate pleasure. We should not shun pleasure, because if you don't have pleasure, then you will have pain, and we should try to avoid pain. So moderate pleasure is good because it keeps a balance of your life. He did not advocate the constant desire of pleasure. There is another philosophy which is called hedonism, which is basically eat, drink and marry. That means you always enjoy what gives you pleasure. He did not advocate that. Please remember that he was not for pleasure seeking all the time. But he said that we should basically enjoy moderate pleasures so that we have a balanced and decent life. The most important thing he said is that we should try to see that there is no pain in our life. So his main emphasis was that if we can eliminate the pain from our life, then we will have more pleasure and will have more time to enjoy the life. you please understand that this is very important. Suppose you have 10 body parts in us and all parts are working perfectly all right. But let us say that you get a pain in the tooth, just one part, and that too just one tooth. And if the tooth is paining continuously, can you enjoy your life? Can you say because all my body parts are good and therefore one part will not make a difference? No, it does not work like that. If you have just one pain, that pain can overtake, overcome or neutralize the effect of hundreds of good things in your life. And that is why Epicurus said that we should not have pain in our life. So our main focus should be to eliminate pain from our life. So he said basically that we should try to condition our mind that we are able to rise above the pain and adversity. That means if you are able to suffer the pain and we are trying to avoid all causes which can eliminate pain, then we will have a much decent life. So he says that this type of stage of tranquility can be achieved through knowledge of the working of the world and limiting of our desire. So two things he is taught. First of all, you should have the knowledge. Why? Because you should know what gives you pain, what gives you pleasure. If you are pursuing an activity which is going to give you pain, then you cannot avoid pain. So you should rather eliminate those activities. So first of all, you should have the knowledge and the right knowledge, and then only you can avoid pain. The second important thing is that you should not have too much of desire, because something which gives you pain or something you give you pleasure, let us say, the pleasure become a pain after some time. Let us say you enjoy listening to music or watching a movie. Now you watch a movie for first time, you may enjoy it, but second time it will not be an enjoyment. And suppose you are asked to watch the same movie for 10 times, then the same activity will become a source of torture for you. So please understand that your greatest pleasure or happiness itself become a source of torture, a source of pain if it is in excess. So he said two things. Number one, you should have the knowledge of what is going to give you pain and what is going to give you pleasure. And second thing is that you should avoid the excess of pleasure, because that will become ultimately pain. Epicurus told us that the source of pleasure are knowledge, friendship, and living a virtuous or temperate life. I've already explained the importance of knowledge. Friendship also is very important, because if you don't have friends in this world, you cannot have a happy life. We need to have friends. And the third thing is that we should live a virtuous life. That means if you are doing evil things, if you are doing wrong things, bad things, then you cannot have, a good life. So we should have the virtuous life, and we should also have a temperate life. That means nothing should be in excess. Enjoy food, but have a balance. Enjoy pleasure, but have a balance. That means you should have control over senses, don't do excess of that. So this is the source of pleasure. Now what else he taught? He says that the pain is the only evil which is to be avoided. We should try to see that we avoid everything from which we get pain. That is the only evil. And he said that morality should be pursued because it gives you pleasure. This is also very important. See, any moral act, whether it is an act of charity, whether it is an act of teaching, whether it is the act of helping, any moral act actually give you an inherent pleasure. When you are giving something to somebody, then you feel a joy inside of giving. And so he says that a moral action is worth pursuing because it gives you happiness. When you are speaking truth, you feel happy. When you are speaking lie, you feel unhappy. And that is why you should choose to speak truth, because truth is something which is going to give you happiness. So he said that, the virtue itself has no intrinsic value. That means speaking truth, speaking untruth itself is neither good nor bad. Then why you should do the virtuous action? Because when you are doing the virtuous action, you feel good about it. When you are doing wrong actions, you feel bad about it. So the very reason for doing the good things in life or being virtuous is because it gives you happiness and pleasure. He, however, said that we should try to avoid the momentary and the sensual pleasure which often lead to pain later stage. For example, being unfaithful or get engaged into immoral practices may give you instant pleasure, but that he said you should not follow, because that is going to give you much more pain in the later stage. So he has never advocated that you should constantly seek pleasure, because certain pleasures may have many times more pain later on. He says that the mental pleasure arises due to our act of remembrance, because in addition to the physical pleasure, there is a mental pleasure also, which is also very important. When we remember our past achievements and good deeds, we feel very happy about it. And when we remember something which we have done wrong in the past, then we feel very bad about it. In the same way, if our future is bright, we think about a good future, we are hopeful, we feel happy. And if we are depressed, we feel negative about our future, we feel bad about it. So that type of pleasure and joy is also important in our life. So we should try to do good things in our life, because whenever we will remember our good deeds, we will feel happy about it. Now, Epicurus made the pleasure and happiness as the main purpose of life. So he said we should try to avoid the learning, cultures and civilization, because sometimes that can disturb our peace of mind. How? Let us understand. You have seen in the history the invasion of Mughals, the invasion of Muslims, or even the invasion of Aryan races. We have seen the discrimination to different castes, religions. Now, once you have that knowledge, then that type of knowledge may make you angry. So he said, let us not give this type of knowledge to the people, because such type of knowledge create hatred, such type of knowledge create anger, and that is also injurious to our pleasure and happiness. So he advocated against giving such type of knowledge. He rather advised us to acquire such type of knowledge which can help us getting rid of the fear of religion, the fear of scripture, the fear of God, the fear of death. Because as long as we believe on these things, we can never be happy. We can never follow a life which is strictly according to the religion. And therefore, as soon as we will do something wrong, we start fearing, and due to this fear, we cannot enjoy happiness. And therefore, we should try to teach the people such things which can actually help them getting rid of such type of fear. Now, he was one of the first person to develop the notion of justice as a concept of social contract. It is an agreement that we should not harm anybody and we should not be harmed. That means when we are living in a society, we should try to see that we don't harm anybody so that we are also not harmed. Ideal society is one where if we cannot help other person, then at least we should not harm other person. And he says that the purpose of the law and the punishment is such that it should actually help the society maximize its pleasure, because anybody who try to harm somebody is actually punished. So the very purpose of law is to punish the guy who is trying to harm somebody. Because if we can implement such type of laws in the society, then nobody will be in a position to harm other people, and therefore everybody will be able to enjoy their happiness to the fullest. And that is why he said that a just law is one which contribute to the promotion of human happiness, because such law will punish all the people who will try to harm other people. So as you can see that what Epicurus taught us is very, very important and relevant, and it is applicable even today. But after the rise of Christianity, the principles of Epicureanism were challenged, because as you know, Jesus Christ told that pain is most important thing. In fact, he sacrificed his own life for the welfare or for the salvation of the humankind. So such type of philosophy gradually became very popular, and thereafter Epicureanism declined. And therefore Epicureanism has a very long period of obscurity. Nevertheless, this principle still remains popular in the modern world because it teaches us that we should not worry much about afterlife, about the scriptures, and lead a life which will give us maximum happiness in this world. So thank you very much for watching the video. I hope that you have been able to understand the basic concept of Epicureanism and the philosopher Epicurus. Thank you very much. Friends, we are learning about the philosophies of Western thinkers. Today we are going to learn about the philosophies of Stoics, which is called Stoicism. And you will find that the philosophy of Stoicism is totally different than the philosophy of Epicurus. So you will be sometime wondering why we are actually teaching you the philosophies of different philosophers of West in so much of detail. Because you will rarely find that any direct question is asked about the philosophy of any Western thinker in the civil services examination. Friends, it's very, very important for us to know about the different thoughts, options which are available to us to lead our life. There has not been a single philosopher whose philosophy has been prevalent all over the world in all period of time. We ourselves should develop inclination for a particular philosophy. So when we are reading the questions, then we should frame our answer which is based on some of the standard philosophies of great Western thinkers. Because no two persons are going to reply in the same manner, just like no two persons live their life in the same manner. And that is why it is very important for us to develop our own philosophy, develop our own method of writing while answering the questions of General Studies paper 4. So friends, today we are going to learn about the Stoics, one of the greatest philosophers, and I must say that I am really fond of the philosophy of Stoics because I have followed this philosophy and I really admire their vision, their thoughts, which is also quite akin to our philosophy of Buddhism. So let's start with the philosophy of Stoics. First of all, let us know the origin of the Stoic philosophy. The Stoic basically means that somebody who is having an endurance of pain or hardship without the display of feeling or without any complaint. See, when problems comes to us, some people start crying as if the problems are given to you undeserved or without any reason. We should understand that problems comes to everybody. Whether you like it or not, it will come. The question is how you withstand the problem, how you stand against the challenges of life. Now, Stoics are those people who basically don't complain about the problem or rather put a very brave face when there is a problem. This school of thought actually started in Greece and it was founded by a great philosopher called Zeno. The term Stoic was taken from a term Stoia Poica, which means painted porch, where Zeno used to teach. So there are three great Stoic philosophers. One is Seneca, other is Epictetus, and third is Marcus Aurelius. Let's understand something about them. Seneca is perhaps the most popular philosopher of Stoicism in the modern time. He was born in 4th century BC and he was basically an advisor of the King Nero, who is notorious for playing flute when Rome was burning. His work involved dozens of essays and around 124 letters which explains his philosophy. He was forced to take his own life because it was suspected that he was involved in the conspiracy to assassinate Nero. The second most important philosopher is Epictetus. Epictetus was basically a slave in the Roman Empire. With permission from his owner, he studied Stoic philosophy under the master Gaius Musonius, and he began to teach philosophy in Rome after the death of Nero. Later he taught in Greece, where he founded a philosophical school teaching Stoicism. And one of his students, Marcus Aurelius, became one of the greatest emperor of the Rome and also one of the great Stoic philosophers. Now let's know about the third great Stoic philosopher, Marcus Aurelius. He was born in the year AD 121. He is considered to be one of the greatest and the wisest Roman emperor to ever lived. You can compare Aurelius something like our Janak or King Janak, who was the father of Sita ji. Like Janak, who is considered to be not only a king but also a very wise person, Marcus Aurelius is also considered to be similar to that he was a king but he was also a great philosopher and thinker. He wrote his journal during the dull moment of his life or during the war campaign. His writings were later compiled and took the shape of a book called Meditations, which contains his Stoic philosophy. Let us now understand the basic principles of Stoic philosophy. The first and foremost Stoic philosophy is that we should be indifferent to the external events. The goal of the Stoics is that we should have freedom from passion. Through the pursuit of reason, we should develop an apathy. Apathy means you should not be very much concerned emotionally with what is going on in the world. Friends, many of our problems arise because we get emotionally attached to so many issues. There has been injustice in this world. There has been poor and rich people in this world. There has been sick and healthy people in the world. And that has always been there. But when we emotionally attach ourselves to a particular group, a particular ideology, particular race, particular country, in that case we start suffering. So he says that we should develop a sort of apathy to actually live a good life. The Stoics thus ask us that we should have indifference to whatever is going on to a very great extent. In the sense that when we are very happy, we should not be too much delighted. When we gain something, we should not be too happy. When we lose something, we should not be too unhappy. The idea is that we should have indifference toward the highs and lows of life, because everybody gets highs and lows and we should be able to withstand that. The second very important teaching of Stoics is that we should live according to the nature. Now, what does it mean? There are two types of things we have to understand when we are talking about living according to the nature. The first important thing is that this world or this nature is governed by certain laws. For example, if I shout at you, you are going to feel angry. If I hate a person, if I hit a person, that person is going to retaliate. If I like a person, appreciate a person, there is a very good possibility that I will get the appreciation in return. So friends, the world is run by certain rules and laws. We should understand those rules and laws and then live according to those rules and laws. For example, if you don't know the law of gravity and you jump from 10-story building, then what will happen? You will die. You will be injured, because nature does not distinguish whether you are aware of the law or not aware of the law. So we should be aware of the law and live our life according to the laws of the nature. The second important thing about the laws of nature is that we too have a nature. Some people like writing, some people like partying, some people like doing something for the people, some people like to be happy. So we all have a very different type of nature. So the second part is that we should live according to our nature. That means whatever gives us joy, we should try to live like that. The third important thing which Stoics teaches us, that you should accept the suffering of life. Friends, we have to understand that suffering is unavoidable. Just like everybody sometime fall sick, everybody grows old, everybody die. In the same way, in the life, suffering is unavoidable. Buddha also teaches us that suffering is unavoidable, accept suffering as the part of life. Once you accept suffering as part of life, then instead of running away from the suffering, you will try to minimize the suffering by understanding what causes the suffering. And so Stoics teaches us that suffering is basically caused from passion and desire. So the more desire you have, the more passion you have for something, the more suffering you are going to have in our life. So basically, if you want happiness, you should try to get rid of these desires and passion, and that is the only way of being happy. The fourth important thing which the Stoics teaches us is the importance of wisdom. He says that unless we have wisdom, we will not be able to lead a good life. Now, what is the meaning of wisdom? Wisdom is basically the use of the right knowledge at the right time, on the right place, at the right person. It is basically our ability to use the knowledge to achieve our goal like happiness, success, and all that. The Stoic says that wisdom is basically the pinnacle or the most important thing about living a good life. He in fact said that wise man and good man both are synonymous to each other. That means if a person is not wise, whatever he does, he cannot do good things for the world. And all the four cardinal values, which are bravery, insight, self-control, and justice, they all originate from wisdom. So all the virtues, goodness, or the values which we say are basically only when you are wise. The fifth important concept which has been given by Stoics is about the egalitarian society. That means he says that everybody is equal. In his time, slavery was very common. Slaves were basically treated as animals. They were traded like animals. But he said no. Slaves are equal to other people because they are also sons of God. And therefore, he says that there should be no distinction as far as the individual is concerned about the rank and the wealth and the social position. That should not differentiate. And that is why, even a slave can become a great philosopher as far as the Stoics is concerned. The sixth important thing he taught us that we should rationally observe the laws. Friends, you will find that many times people are angry at the laws because they don't understand the benefits of the laws. For example, income tax. Now, most people say, why should we pay income tax? Because they don't understand that income tax has a social purpose. If the government does not get revenue, how they are going to manage defense, police, and all that? Similarly, the punishment which is given for committing a crime, corruption, everything is having a purpose. So he says that don't follow the law blindly and grudgingly. Rather, understand the law and thereby you follow it with a rational mind. One of the great contributions of Stoics is understanding the origin of anger. Friends, anger is very destructive emotion. When we are angry and lose our temper, within seconds, sometimes we destroy the relationships which we have created over years. Sometimes in the fit of anger, people kill even during the road traveling and then spoil their life. So anger is very, very dangerous. And he has given a philosophy about what is the cause of anger. The seventh important thing which the Stoics taught us that we should reduce our expectation to control or check anger. The Stoics have analyzed that the greatest reason for anger is our expectation. When we are having high expectation from the people, when we are having high expectation from ourselves, then we are more likely to be angry. People think that anger is an emotion you cannot manage. It is impossible to manage anger. But that is not true. Rationally, if you analyze, then you will find that every anger has a reason, and that reason is the expectation. So he suggested that we should have a lower expectation from ourselves and also from the other people if we want to reduce anger in our life. Because anger spoils years of relationship, and therefore it is important to manage anger. So reduce expectation, have a little pessimistic view of life, don't expect too much, don't be too much optimistic, because that is going to give you anger and frustration. The eighth important thing which he told us is that knowledge comes from senses. You will find many philosophers in India or in foreign countries who says senses give you incorrect information. Senses misguide you. In fact, in India we call it Maya, that what we see is basically wrong. In the Western countries, if you read the philosophy of Plato, the Plato also says that senses commit mistake and what is most important is the mind. But this was contested by the Stoics. They said no, the sensual perception is the correct perception. When we receive some information from the senses, it is not wrong per se. It is basically captured by the mind, and then mind analyze that information, and then it try to create a composite picture or a harmonious relationship between different type of information, and that is how we create knowledge. So you saw something once, you saw something second time, you saw something third time, and then you find what is the common law, and that is how we create knowledge. So he says that we cannot exclude the senses, we cannot say that senses are faulty, erroneous, because without senses you cannot get any knowledge. Now let's understand the concept of God which has been given by the Stoics. The Stoics says that the world is divided into two parts. One is the living beings, the other is the dead and things. For example, all the matter. So all the matter is passive and the living things are active. He says all the living things have soul inside them. And then he believed that basically all the soul originated from fire or God, and it will ultimately go in the fire or become part of God. It is quite similar to our own philosophy. We say that everything comes from God and we become part of God. That is why Atma and Paramatma is said to be similar thing, because Atma is part of God and ultimately it comes from God and it goes into God. Something very similar has been said by the Stoics also. And he says that all our goodness, all our virtues are basically because of God. God is the source of all our virtues. This is again very similar to our Indian philosophy. Indian philosophy also believes that everybody is having God inside him, and it is only because we do not listen to our voice, we do not listen to our internal voice, which is the voice of the God, we commit so many mistakes. Same thing has been advised by Seneca, that the best way to live the life is to listen to our inner voice, because that is the voice of consciousness and the God. If we follow our inner guide, we will live a good life. The 10th important thing was about the materialism. The Stoics believe that everything is basically material in nature. Even the mind, even the emotions, all that has a material manifestation. Now you must have seen that when you get angry, then you develop certain type of physical manifestation. Your face will become red, your heartbeat will be rising. So he says that even emotions are having a material manifestation. When we are hungry, we get angry. And if your mind thinks, then accordingly your movement in the body are produced. When your mind is still, you will find the body is still. Your mind is moving, you will find that the body is also restless. So he says that basically the body and the soul and the emotions and the mind, everything is made from the same thing, and that is basically material in nature. And finally, my friend, that the Stoics believe on the monism. What is the meaning of monism? Monism means everything is one. He believed that God is something like a grand, the universe, and everything basically is part of this God's body. So the entire world, entire universe can be conceived to be God, and we like a cell of this body. And therefore everything originated from the same source and everything will go to the same source. And that is what is the meaning, that we are part of the same reality. So the people are not different from each other, people are basically one. So just like blood may have thousands of cells or millions of cells, but each is coming from the same source, each is having something common. In the same way, all human beings, all living beings are originated from the same source and they have everything common in them. So if we give pain to other people, we are going to get pain in ourselves because the word is just one. That is the meaning of monism. So friends, today we learned about the philosophies of Stoics and we learned how it is different from other philosophers like Plato or Epicurus. We have to understand this philosophy in detail and then we can form a view and then we can write best answers in the civil services examination. Thank you very much for watching the video.